Welcome, everybody. How's it going? I am Eric. This is Robert. Today it is In the
Oh,
Spotlight. It is Scream Stream Edition. And so Robert is joining with me today. We have an amazing guest for you guys, Mr. David Howard Thornton. You will know him as the Terrifier, Art the Clown. Definitely, like I said, we are excited for this one, Robert. We've
oh yeah.
talked about it and definitely looking forward to it. So we appreciate if you're watching on the rewind. Thank you so much. Go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Like I said, so you get notifications because we will continue to have guests show up and have more interviews like this down the road. But we want to go ahead and see, Robert, who might be in the chat. So let's give a little hi. Let's ask Art the Clown to give us a little hi here real quick. That is high for you. So we have Christina Payne, Tats, Horror Collector Fiend. How are you guys? I appreciate you guys being here. You guys also, just let you know, we may be giving some stuff away a little bit later on. So you have an opportunity to be doing that. Got to be active in the chat. But we definitely have a show for you today. And so, Robert, are you excited?
I am. I am really looking forward to this. This is actually one of the films that I watched during lockdown. So definitely looking forward to have some good questions that I want to ask, and just really, me and clowns. So really excited. Really looking forward to this.
Well, when you watch something like this in lockdown and then you can't get out and you're like, okay, now I'm scared, because like you're checking the closets underneath your bed, you're like, all right, like I've already got my mind working, it's things are going, but definitely we want to have a little bit of fun. We are going to bring our guest on, but let's go ahead and kick off our show like we normally do. We're going to bring in our basically our intro. I did a little bit different this time because it is Scream Stream Edition. So let's go ahead. And welcome, David Howard Thornton. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Glad to be here. Love that intro. That was spooky.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Like I said, I had to have a little fun with it. And that's kind of what we do here. We do things a little bit different on interview side, where we do like to treat our guest and just let them know that we are welcoming them, appreciating them for being here. Mr. David Howard Thornton, now obviously we also know you as the Terrifier, Art the Clown. It's such an honor, such a pleasure to have you here. It really, truly is. So what I'm going to say, guys, in 1860, the world gave us technology for silent films, age of the silver screen. And in 1903, we had the great train robbery burst onto the scene. But one thing silent films did not rob us of was inspirational artists such as Buster Keaton, Douglas Fairbanks, Groucho Marx, and the great Charlie Chaplin. And even in later years, Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean. Those inspirations went on to inspire our guest today. So ladies and gentlemen, he is silent and deadly, but today we have the privilege of sitting down with Art the Clown himself, Mr. David Howard Thornton, on the film The Terrifier. Now, you have some history with some of the silent films.
I do.
So tell us a little bit about that. How did you come into the love for some of that?
That was just growing up in my household. Like my parents and my mom's parents were big into the silent films. They were like, you need to watch these. These are great people to learn from, great comedians. And so I did. I loved them. And basically, when I was about 12 or 13 years old, my aunt gifted me a box set of Mr. Bean videos for Christmas. And I would just yes, yeah, I would sit there and just watch those over and over and over and over and over, and I just love that style of comedy because it translates across the world. You don't have to worry about what language it is in. You can watch a silent film actor and appreciate it no matter where you are worldwide, and that's what I love about it too. Yes. And I think that's what really started my love for the genre. And after that, I really started watching more of it. So that's when I really delved deep into like Marx Brothers films, because I really like those a lot, because not only would you have like the silent comedy was Harpo, they would end up doing musical numbers using silent comedy as well. Like Harpo would sit there doing his harp routine. He'll be eating an apple and he'd be like putting it through the the harp and like using it to peel the apple. I'm like, this is brilliant. It's brilliant comedy, and it's something you don't really see that much anymore. And I'm glad I had an opportunity to kind of bring it back in some ways, but in a different type of way.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely a different type of way in regards, just the role in itself, not having to be able to talk. And you're now now, I know that somebody else had played, Art the Clown previously in regards, Mike Gianelli. And the thing is obviously then you took that on and you took it in your own direction. You obviously used something that he provided,
Right.
a platform, but you also decided to make it your own. So what went into that process? Like when you go into the audition and you find out what you're going to do, where's that thought process for you?
That was kind of one of those things where I watched because I had seen All Hallows Eve even before I knew about the auditions for Terrifier, so I already loved the character. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, God, I would love to have a chance to play a character like that. He's like an evil Mr. Bean, and I always wanted to play a Mr. Bean-like character because I think that would be such a great challenge as an actor to, utilize some like physical comedy in that way, especially silent comedian type of style, I guess you could say. And so when that role came around, I was like, oh, I have to do this. So that's what I did. I went back and rewatched All Hallows Eve just so I could get an idea what Mike brought to the character. And I liked what he did. He, built a very solid foundation for me to, start off with. But then I noticed that he didn't really bring a lot of the clownish aspects to the character like I wanted. Like I would have done. So that's what I want to do. It's like I want to bring more of the physicality to the character because at that time period in my life, I had just finished doing 5 tours of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the musical, and our Grinch was Stephen Carl, who played Robbie Rotten on the show Lazy Town. And Stephen was a master at physical comedy. He did a lot of that with the Grinch role. So after 5 years of watching him do his thing, I added a lot of that type of cartoonish, characterization to art, and I figured that would kind of make him a little bit freakier because he looks kind of human, but he's doing some very inhuman things, over the top things, and that's what I want to bring to it. So that's what I did.
Well, you obviously you nailed it. It created a phenomenon like a cult following, and it has allowed you to dive into Terrifier 2 and possibly 3 on the horizon, because I know they've spoken about doing a trilogy and seeing where that might go. So we are excited for part 2 to come out. And I know that you were supposed to do it last year, but obviously got pushed back. So we are excited for the anticipation. Now, is there an idea when the trailer, is it something maybe in October that we're looking for this movie, or?
I have no idea. We're hoping. Okay. Right now it's all up to, how quickly we can get it edited and into the hands of distribution. And because we're going to have to find a distribution for it after it's all edited. So who knows how long that's going to take. But I have a feeling it's going to go a lot better this time for distribution than it did last time. Because last time for Terrifier, we almost had to do self-distribution until Dread Central picked us up. through Steve Barton, who's Uncle Creepy. He saw us at a screening in LA when we were just doing little screenings here or there at different festivals. He's like, oh my gosh, this is got to see the light of day to mass audiences. So he picked us up. He's like, he went to Dread Central, like, you guys have got to pick up this movie. So I think this time around, whoever would pass on us just doesn't want to make money.
You definitely, and there's some crowdfunding, to where some people can donate and put time into it, or the money, but they also get to be on the set, right?
Yes.
So that must be, obviously a joy for them to be able to do that. But even for you, what's that like interacting with, the people that that love this movie or are behind it 100%, but now they get an opportunity to be like, hey, I get to be killed by the Terrifier, I get to be in a scene, and then, oh, by the way, David Howard Thornton, how are you? So what's that like?
Oh, I would say that was the most fun week we had on set. And the funny thing was, this is a big, huge set piece that before we filmed it, we were so afraid of filming this scene because there's so many elements to it and so many stunts that could go horribly wrong. And so we were very stressed. But that ended up being the most fun week we had on set, because I think having the fans there on set being part of this scene, it was like letting us see the film through fresh eyes, because we had been doing it for a few months already, through some very miserable conditions too, filming in the winter. So it was nice coming on set and seeing all these people that are so excited to be there and seeing what it was like being on a set for their first time. So that was fun. What was so funny about it too was like, I think they were so excited. So when they're having to die, we had to keep telling them, don't smile. Because we had some people, they're just, they're in the middle of their death. They're just like, because they're just so excited to be doing it.
It's like, okay, here's this guy who's about to kill me looking like this. And you're smiling. You're like, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. It was just a fun week. It was a fun week. And, I wouldn't trade that in for anything. It's just because these were people that were true fans. They had and helped us out a lot on getting this movie started, because I'd say most of the film is funded by the fans, and every dime that we were able to raise was put to very good use, because making films is not a cheap thing to do. And we're still not a big Hollywood budget movie. We're not even a multi-million-dollar movie. So every dime was put to good use, and I'm constantly amazed about what we were able to pull off with the budget that we had. And it's thanks to the fans.
We do have somebody in the chat. They're saying, if they want to make a horror film, like if you're starting out, like what would you suggest, like with some of your experience that you've gone through now? And I know, horror is something that you came into,
right?
But what would you say to somebody that's like, I've been thinking about horror films and making them, like, what would you suggest?
I would suggest, start small, like do little, like some short films or something like that. I think that's how Damon kind of got started, was doing those with some friends and just kind of built his way up from there. I would say definitely watch a lot of horror films and find inspiration in those. And because I look at Damon, why Damon's been so good at this is because he's a true horror fan. He grew up watching horror films when he was like 3 or 4 years old. He's literally named after Damien from The Omen. So he's like, he's a walking encyclopedia when it comes to horror films.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Oh, yeah. So, and I think that's what it is. It's like when you get people that are actually passionate about the genre, making the films in that genre, that's when you get the better products, because they're going to put everything they have into it, making the best it's going to be, because they make the films they want to see.
Well, and that's what's kind of frustrating, because I know like Freddy versus Jason, the director Ronnie Yu never even saw any Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but yet here he is trying to bring these two icons together. Yeah. And even though I enjoyed it because I liked seeing them, but it wasn't the film that you would hope for. And you definitely, even in some of the scary movies, if you go back and watch some of them with budgeting and special effects, like I saw this one horror film where they were going to crash through the window, but the window broke before they crashed through it. And and then there was another time where you can go back and there was an ironing board on the scene in between like the two scenes and stuff, and you're just like, okay, like don't you guys catch up on these things? Like, you know, when you're watching a horror movie, I mean, that's the fun part is like, oh, come on, like, did you see that? And but with you guys now, what was different about this type of film, you really wanted to ramp it up. You really wanted with the special effects. And I know a lot of people, you know, it's like they like the gore, but then sometimes people like the suspense, and sometimes there's like, oh, it's too gory for me. But the big budget movies are kind of getting away from that. They're investing a lot, and it's like they're missing the boat a little bit, because some of the fans really want to see, if it's a horror movie, I mean, it's not like the killer's going to say, oh, let me go ahead and dust you off. I'm gonna kill you, but I'm gonna do it gently, you know. So obviously you're going to see some of that. There was a scene that was, you know, a lot of people talked about maybe possibly coming out, and it stayed in, and you had some influence behind that. Can you explain that the one scene that we're talking about, where obviously you had some prosthetics, you had like a lifelike type bodies, so you were hacking away, so obviously, you know, what goes into that, because you know that's important to have that generate on the screen as realism.
Yeah, I guess you're talking about the infamous hacksaw scene, correct? Yeah. Yeah, that was one of those things. So like when I first read it in the script, I expected it to be like you see in most films where, you know, okay, he's just giving a description of what happens, but we're not going to show it all. We're going to show like the before and then the after. We're not going to show the actual kill happening. But he's like writing it out very descriptively what's going on. I'm like, so I contacted Damon, like, wait, are we actually going to show all of this? He's like, yes, we are going to show the whole entire, we're going to show you actually cutting through this body and everything coming out of it. I'm like, that's insane. I am totally on board for that, because you don't see that in these films that much anymore. It's very rare to see that. So it's like, oh, I was totally on board for that. So it was actually a complicated scene to film, because there were a lot of elements that went into it. First of all, we filmed it in two different locations, basically, because like the first location where we filmed all the stuff with Jenna Cannell, because we had to film her stuff first, because she had to go film the Bye Bye Man, like literally 2 days from when she left set, she was on set of Bye Bye Man. So we had to film her stuff first in New Jersey. Then we had to end up leaving that location for some unforeseen reasons. That's like, we're kind of glad we got out of that place. But so like the stuff you see with Catherine, it was filmed in Staten Island instead 2 months later, in like freezing temperatures too. It was 20 degrees that night. She's having to do all that stuff in this room that had no heat, and oh my gosh! So it was brutal, because we only had 30 seconds at a time to film, because it's so dangerous to hang someone upside down for extended periods of time. So that was very stressful. And so we would, you know, flip her down real quick, film real quick, flip her back up, let her rest, you know, just kind of, that was a stressful night, very stressful night. And then we did that. Then we filmed all the prosthetic another night, where I actually cut through it. And that was a little bit more fun, because like, okay, now I can actually just, there's no stress about actually hurting somebody. I can just cut through this thing and have some fun with it. So we did. But there was an accident that happened with that too, with the guts that spill out. The intestines were made with sausage casings with fat shoved inside of them, so it looked like intestines. And we were originally supposed to film the scene with Dawn getting killed 2 weeks prior, but there was flooding in the room, so we had to postpone it 2 weeks. So we had those intestines ready to go, but our DP took them home with them, but forgot to refrigerate them.
Oh, wow.
So we opened them that night 2 weeks later. We're like, oh, God.
Wow.
It was the most vile. It was vile. It was, oh, God. It's a good thing we weren't running sound that night, because you just hear everybody on set just, oh. Because the smell was so bad, and especially when I accidentally cut into him with the blade, I was like, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." So yeah, no, but it turned out well. And what was so funny about it is, like, going back to distribution, we actually had problems with distribution originally, because we had some studios that wanted to put us in theaters, but they wanted to make massive cuts to the film, and that was one of the massive cuts they wanted to make, was not showing most of that scene. And Damien was absolutely not. You were going to show this scene, or you're not getting the film. And I'm glad he stuck to his guns.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, that's your work. That's your baby. You're putting a lot into it, and you're investing in it. Like I said, so I mean, it's like there's going to be somebody else that's going to take it on. I mean,
Yeah.
with gore and stuff like that, there is going to be somebody that's going to want to take that on. And now that you lead into Terrifier 2, you have to top that, right? I mean, there's. I mean, I'm sure like there's going to be some exciting stuff that's going to be happening here. Now, does this happen where you got to come right out of the gates, like a Scream type of scenario, or does it build up to it? Or, I mean, what are we looking at here for Terrifier 2?
Well, one thing like Damien and I talked about after because like he's big into reading all of the reviews that come out, the positive and negative. He reads everything and takes them to heart. And that's one thing we talked about. It's like we have set the bar kind of high for ourselves with Terrifier 2. Okay, so what can we do? We have a lot of expectations on us now, so oh crap. So one thing we said is like, one thing people always remember about a movie is the beginning and the ending. So you have to start it off with a bang and end it in a bang. And they'll usually forgive whatever happens in the middle if things don't go out as well as you want them to. So that's one of the things we set out to do, is start the movie off with a huge set piece and end it on a huge set piece. So it starts off in the first 5 minutes, we would probably get an NC-17 rating.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see dead people. Red blood. Red blood.